In the late 1990s, Pakistan witnessed one of the most disturbing criminal cases in its modern history. A single newspaper advertisement would lead investigators to a horrifying discovery, one that shocked an entire nation and forced difficult questions about child safety, policing, and justice. This is the story of the Javed Iqbal case. To understand why this case became so significant, we need to look at Pakistan during the late 1990s. Cities such as Lahore were growing rapidly. Thousands of families moved there in search of employment and better opportunities. Among them were many children living in difficult circumstances. Some worked on the streets, others had become separated from their families, and many had little protection or support. Organizations that focused on missing children were still developing, and communication between police departments was far less advanced than it is today. Reports of missing children were not always connected across different jurisdictions, making it difficult to identify larger patterns. These conditions created vulnerabilities that criminals could exploit. In 1999, newspapers across Pakistan published a letter that immediately captured national attention. The author claimed responsibility for the deaths of 100 children. The letter described methods that investigators would later examine and included information that appeared impossible to dismiss as a hoax. The writer also claimed that he had taken his own life after sending the confession. The letter contained details that prompted authorities to act immediately. Police traced the information provided in the confession to a residence in Lahore. What they found inside transformed what had seemed unbelievable into one of the largest criminal investigations in Pakistan's history. The property became an active crime scene. Investigators collected physical evidence, documents, and other materials requiring extensive forensic examination. As forensic teams continued their work, authorities began comparing missing person reports from across the region. Families who had searched desperately for their children for months, and in some cases years, began arriving with hope that they might finally receive answers. For many, those answers would be heartbreaking. The investigation quickly expanded beyond a single location. Detectives interviewed witnesses, reviewed records, and attempted to reconstruct a timeline from hundreds of separate leads. As news spread, television stations interrupted regular programming. Newspapers printed continuous updates. Public concern grew by the hour. The investigation that followed would become one of the most challenging criminal inquiries Pakistan had ever faced. By the time investigators secured the Lahore property, the case had already attracted nationwide attention. The confession letter had raised extraordinary claims, but investigators still had to verify every detail through evidence. In any major criminal investigation, a confession alone is never enough. Police must establish what can be independently confirmed through forensic analysis, witness testimony, and official records. As detectives examined the residence, they collected a large amount of physical evidence and documented the scene in detail. Every room, every object, and every document was carefully cataloged. Specialists from forensic laboratories were brought in to assist with the investigation. At the same time, police began reviewing reports of missing children from Lahore and surrounding areas. Many of the cases involved children from low-income families. Some had been working on the streets, while others had left home for work and never returned. For years, many parents had searched tirelessly for answers. Some had filed police reports. Others had placed notices in newspapers or asked local communities for help. Many had simply waited, hoping their child would one day come home. Now, investigators faced the difficult task of determining whether these missing person cases were connected. The investigation soon expanded into one of the largest criminal inquiries Pakistan had seen. Officers interviewed neighbors, former associates, landlords, and anyone who might have encountered the suspect. Every lead was examined, no matter how small. According to official findings, investigators concluded that the offender had deliberately targeted vulnerable children, often choosing those who had little protection or whose disappearances might not receive immediate public attention. Media coverage grew rapidly. Newspapers published front-page updates almost every day, while television news programs devoted extensive airtime to the investigation. Across Pakistan, families followed every development, hoping for answers and accountability. As evidence continued to emerge, authorities worked to establish exactly what had happened and identify as many victims as possible. The process proved extremely challenging, requiring careful forensic examination and the review of numerous missing person records. Throughout the investigation, officials emphasized that every conclusion had to be supported by evidence, rather than speculation. The investigation would eventually lead to one of the most widely discussed criminal cases in Pakistan's history. Yet even as the evidence became clearer, one crucial question remained unanswered. Where was the man who had signed the confession? Authorities had initially believed that he had taken his own life, as claimed in the letter. But new developments would soon reveal a very different reality. The search was far from over. Despite the confession's claim that its author had ended his own life, investigators continued to search for him. As the investigation progressed, evidence suggested that the story in the letter was false. Rather than accepting the claim at face value, law enforcement expanded the search, following leads from witnesses and reviewing information gathered during the investigation. Not long afterward, authorities located and arrested Javed Iqbal. His arrest marked a turning point in the case. For investigators, it provided an opportunity to compare the evidence collected from the crime scene with statements made during questioning. As in any criminal investigation, officials sought to distinguish between claims that could be verified and those that could not. The case quickly moved into Pakistan's judicial system. Court proceedings attracted enormous public attention. Journalists, legal experts, and members of the public closely followed each hearing, while newspapers reported new developments almost daily. In October 2000, an anti-terrorism court in Lahore convicted Javed Iqbal on multiple charges. The court imposed the death penalty and additional sentences related to the offenses for which he had been found guilty. The judgment drew widespread public attention and prompted extensive discussion throughout Pakistan about justice, child protection, and the responsibilities of law enforcement agencies. However, the legal process would not reach its expected conclusion. Before the sentence could be carried out, an unexpected event changed the course of the case. In October 2001, prison officials discovered Javed Iqbal and an accomplice dead in their cells at Lahore's Kot Lakhpat jail. Authorities concluded that they had died by suicide while in custody. The government ordered inquiries into the circumstances surrounding the deaths, and the incident became another subject of public debate. Because the offender died before the sentence was carried out, some families expressed disappointment that the judicial process had ended in this way. Others believed that, regardless of the circumstances, the most important outcome was that the crimes had been fully investigated and officially documented. Even after the case closed in court, its impact did not end. The investigation had exposed significant weaknesses in the systems designed to protect vulnerable children. It also highlighted the importance of promptly reporting missing children, improving coordination between police agencies, strengthening forensic capabilities, and ensuring that every missing person report receives serious attention. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the case is not the offender himself. It is the lives of the children who are lost, and the families whose search for answers changed the country forever. Today, more than 2 decades later, the Javed Iqbal case remains one of the most discussed criminal investigations in Pakistan's history. It is studied not because of the offender himself, but because it exposed important lessons about public safety, criminal investigations, and the protection of children. For investigators, it highlighted the importance of forensic science, thorough evidence collection, and cooperation across different police jurisdictions. For policymakers, it underscored the need for stronger child protection systems. For society, it served as a reminder that vulnerable children must never be ignored. And for the families affected, it remains a deeply personal tragedy that cannot be measured by court records or newspaper headlines. When documentaries revisit cases like this, there is always a risk that attention shifts toward the perpetrator instead of the people who suffered most. That is why the victims should remain at the center of this story. Each child had a name. Each child had dreams, a family, and a future that was taken away. Their stories deserve to be remembered with dignity and respect. If there is one lesson to take from this case, it is that protecting children is a responsibility shared by everyone: parents, neighbors, teachers, communities, and public institutions alike. Reporting concerns early, supporting vulnerable families, and taking every missing person report seriously can help prevent future tragedies. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing for more fact-based historical and true crime documentaries that focus on evidence, context, and the lessons history can teach us. If you have thoughts about this case or suggestions for future documentaries, share them respectfully in the comments below. And most importantly, let us remember the victims, not for how their lives ended, but for the lives they should have had. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next documentary.